For years, outdoor brands have shouted to the skies, each claiming their gear is better, tougher, smarter than the next. They bragged about seams and fabrics, about features you didn't need. And when the world started caring about the planet, those same brands tried to have it both ways, making the same old stuff, but slapping on a green label to soothe out the conscience. But Livesen isn't like the rest. Livesen was born to help you strip it all down, to live with intention, own less, live more. It's a simple creed, but simplicity is what matters most. We've been timeless since before we even had a name. Livesen grew out of a deep hunger for freedom, a love for this earth, and the people who walk it. We don't obsess over the gear. We focus on the life the gear lets you live. Retailers, think on this. How many brands do you carry that are cut from the same old cloth, filling the racks with sameness? Couldn't your floor use a little something different? A brand that doesn't just sell clothes, but sells a way of being? Livesen gear is built to last, to be repaired, to stick with your customers for a lifetime of trails, peaks, and adventures. In the Ozarks, we have an honest, gritty sensibility with a sharp edge of style. It's what happens when the love of the land meets a modern streak. And if you're wondering, Livesen's founder, Andrew Gibbs Dabney, can explain it better than anyone. Look, guys, here's the straight talk. We believe in Livesen enough to put our name on it. Send in your Fall 25 preseason orders by January 15th. Mention this podcast, and you'll get the Rock Fight preseason special, a clean 2% off, stacked on top of Livesen's own preseason program discounts. Don't wait. Stock the brand that's burning hot in the outdoor world, the brand that's here for the long haul. Be a rock fighter, not just another retailer. Livesen. Own less, live more. Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin, and today we're looking at a new brand that is working to change the nutrition category. Today, we're talking to the founders of Feel Goods. But before we get to that, hey, have you subscribed to Rock Fight's weekly newsletter? If not, you're missing out, because it's not just another lame aggregator of what's happening here at Rock Fight or in the industry. I mean, there's a little bit of that, but there's also original content that we don't put anywhere else. You got to head to rockfight.co and click join the mailing list to sign up. And lastly, if you are new around here, or even if you're not, we'd love it if you would subscribe and join the Rock Fight by hitting that follow button on whatever podcast app you are listening to us on. Leave us also that 5-star rating, guys. It really helps out the show. And speaking of the show, let's start the show. Here we go.
Welcome to the Rock Fight, Rock Fight, Rock Fight.
Okay, recently you may have heard some ads here on the Rock Fight as well as over on Gear and Beer promoting a brand called Feel Goods. And if this is the first time you've heard of them, that's okay. They just launched this past March. And on today's episode, we're featuring their founders, and here's why. Well, the main reason why is that Feel Goods is trying to change things. They offer a box-based subscription service to anyone looking to replace calories. And the nutrition category in our industry can often feel a little scattershot. There is a ton of information and a ton of product out there, and yet many folks really don't know much about replacing the calories they burn doing their favorite activities. And at retail, there's a wide variety of experiences you can have when it comes to the quality of a store's assortment of nutrition. Some take it super seriously, some are simply checking the box, and plenty of others have probably forgotten that they even sell stuff that you can eat. So the opportunity exists for someone to kick in the door and do it better, and that's what Laura Jorgensen and Courteney Lowe are trying to do with Feel Goods. And highlighting founders who are taking a different approach to solving problems in the outdoor industry is always something we're keen to do here on the Rock Fight. So no, we haven't set up some sort of gift with purchase program where if you cut some ads with the show, you also get to appear on the show. The fact is that Feel Goods is an outdoor brand story of the highest order that is starting something new with aspirations on changing how outdoor enthusiasts get and use their nutrition products. So let's get into it. Welcome back to the Rock Fight, where today, it's the future of nutrition in the outdoor industry with Laura Jorgensen and Courteney Lowe of Feel Goods. All right, well, you're joined now by the founders of Feel Goods, Laura Jorgensen and Courteney Lowe. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
I did want to just ask, I mean, for considering you're both former professional cyclists, we'll still call you professional cyclists. You keep that title forever, I think, right? That's how that goes, right? I do feel like Laura was being a little like, come on, man, the 5K, was it really that scary, Laura? I mean, there's a lot of social media posts about, I got to run a 5K. Like, come on, it's a 5K.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the hardest thing about the 5K was my knee, because I think the reason that I haven't run isn't because I can't, it wasn't because the distance is hard. It's because I have triple ACL tear, no meniscus arthritis at the age of 28. It actually was kind of hard for me to run that 5K.
She was nervous.
Well, you crushed it though. You did 20 minutes.
It was
That's insane.
Yeah, still limping today, but yeah, no, it was fun.
How is the knee? Like 4 or 5 days later, is it feeling better? Is it feeling okay?
It's no.
No. Yeah, no.
No, it's not. So I'm really glad I had when you have something on the calendar, it doesn't matter if it's a 5K or a marathon. If it's on the calendar, you got to do it.
It's nice to have, right? Yeah.
And so it was nice to have that and train for something. And let me tell you, running it in 20 minutes was not easy. And especially on 3 weeks of training, and I can't run 2 days in a row. I can't do any of that because of my knee. So it was like a really hard push, and I freaking love that, right? Like I love just to try to do something challenging. And for me, the challenge was not to just run the distance, but it was like, let's see what I can push out of myself.
Come out of it healthy, right? Yeah.
So it was, I had a blast. We'll see what happens next. I've got to figure out my knee situation before I sign up for any more road races. But
when she has something on her mind, it's on the training plan, she will do it. And for example, in a big 3-week block of training, we had a track session on the training schedule, and it happened to be almost snowing, but instead it was pouring down with rain. We have to do it before work. So I think we started at 6:30 a.m. at the track, and it was it wasn't are you still going to go? I was like, we will be there in the rain. And she showed up. There was obviously nobody else there at all.
And I was just like, when I retired, I said, I'm never training in these conditions ever again. And then I just looked at Courtney and laughed. I'm like, not only am I doing it, I'm doing it for a freaking turkey trot.
For a turkey trot.
What is happening right now? But I said
amazing.
I was going to do it. So have to do it.
Well, so let's talk about feel goods, right? Because I selfishly find nutrition to be one of the most interesting categories in the outdoor and active industries. I was a sales manager at GU Energy Labs and then at ProBar. And I think, kind of like we've been saying in our ads for you guys, everyone has to eat, right? And I think it's this weird, funny kind of category where that's an accessory. Like if you look at an outdoor shop or a run store or whatever, it's like, hey, here's your nutrition section. I don't want to say it's an afterthought, but it definitely doesn't get the love that maybe some other, categories get, right? So, but it doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be walking on a treadmill or bike packing like to South America. Fueling has to be considered. Now, I wanted to start kind of with both of you, and because you both came to your company by way of endurance sports. Did you ever think you were going to own a brand that would be food-based? Was this ever in the cards for you when you were racing competitively?
Oh man, that's a hard one. And I will even say, don't walk on eggshells. Nutrition is an afterthought. It's like that end cap when you walk through the checkout, and it has been, I've said it before. I'm like, it's like the ugly stepchild of sport, right? It's like nutrition can go over there and let's have the sexy shoes and all the gear and all the cool stuff. And I think it's just kind of ironic because bad nutrition can ruin your day more than anything else can. I get it. If you have a bad pair of shoes or a bad pair of shorts, that can be really bad. But if you don't fuel, that is probably going to be worse. So it's
probably not even doing outdoor sports or adventure or endurance sports. It can ruin your day, just any day by not fueling.
Yeah,
any
right?
day. Just any day. Sitting at my computer, it can ruin my day. Right. So I'm and I'd say when we were racing, we had the runner and the rider box, which were the subscription boxes, and we still have them, and they're not just fuel; they're fuel and accessories. But through the course of riding, fueling, I was not good at it. Let me put it that way. When I met Courtney, I just had no freaking clue what I was doing. I was so underfueled. And I think through the course of my career, figuring out how important fueling was the impetus for us to launch Fuel Goods, because we're people just, they don't even know what they need, right? And I think that's the hardest part, right? Is telling someone hey, here's the things you never know you needed, right? It's so easy when it's well, duh, I need that pair of shoes, right? It's a little bit harder when you're kind of informing the customer. So that's tricky. And we're super passionate about it because I think the proof is in the pudding that once you try it, you're going to keep going back to it because the efficacy is that's there, right? And nobody wants to feel like crap. So as soon as they realize that they don't have to feel like crap, they continue to do it. It's just we get this conflation in endurance sports that suffering is part of the deal. So it's like, oh, well, I'm suffering, but I'm supposed to be because it's endurance sport. So sometimes people aren't able to tease out like, oh, I'm suffering because I haven't fueled properly, right? That those are two different things. But that's kind of easier to talk about than to get someone to come to that realization. But once they do, they're totally sold, right?
Courtney, did you have any trouble with fueling back in your pro days?
I mean, I was pretty lucky in that I grew up with a dad who rode bikes a lot, and he's an endurance athlete. My sister's an endurance athlete and works within the nutrition world. And I think that I definitely got help. So I've been around proper nutrition advice basically since a young age, which has been awesome. But I think it's very rare to come by that. And I think for me, I sort of took it like, I mean, I always knew that I had to fuel to be able to perform. And then the more like that I would be around people that it's kind of amazing. I was like, wow, they have no idea how much better they could be if they just fueled. And like, it's just like, you just see it. And an example for Laura, like she'd get back from a monster ride and not like eat anything. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, let's get the protein down. Let's get the carbohydrate. Let's go. Let's make sure that we can, do that workout again tomorrow. And it's just amazing how little information there is out there about it, and it is just so overwhelming. So yeah, I mean, I was lucky. I definitely got a leg up on the fueling side from a young age.
Courtney's parents also own like a very nice restaurant in New Zealand, and I think your culture as a whole, where you grew up, this notion of food as fuel is much more prevalent. Like they eat so much cleaner because they recognize like what you put into your body matters. Whereas I'd say here in America, there's like this big notion of like 100-calorie pack, like this super size me.
Yeah,
like
right.
nobody
Here's
cares.
the prescription.
Yeah, like we don't teach that story of like the quality of what goes in is the quality of the energy that comes out. And I mean, obviously it's getting more traction, but just as a culture in general, we don't have that same like understanding around food that I think you grew up in.
Yeah, I think there's you probably have unlimited customers here in the U.S. because I think it's I don't know if we'll ever reach everybody, right? Because I think back to when I was starting to do endurance sports in the early 2000s, and I was actually working with a team of adventure racers, and there was a guy on the team who was a really talented racer, but he would always get sick during races. Anything over 12 hours, he could count on him having a few hours of throwing up, and for a while it was just he'll be fine, he'll figure it out. Then actually did the work to figure out like it was how he was fueling, right? To kind of figure that out. And then also here in 2024, I play on an adult hockey league, and I sit in it most of the time and I look around, and it's called beer league. I understand that people are going to drink beer before, during, and after games. I get it. But I also can't help but look at everybody in the room and be like, if you got off the ice or between the periods had like a little bite of something, and just like no one wants to hear it. No one even thinks that that's a possibility. Then they complain when they don't feel good at the end of a game because they've been like pounding Coors Lights or whatever it is for an hour. So it's just like it is going to be the never-ending struggle, probably of feel goods for as long as the brand exists. You'll always have customers, I'm sure.
Oh,
Totally.
100%. And like the misnomer that what you're eating for the effort, right? Like a lot of people are like, well, I don't need to eat to play hockey. I don't need to eat to, fuel to go to yoga or whatever. And it's like, it's getting that message across that it's not just for the activity. It's like for the duration, right? Like if you stay fueled, you're going to feel so much better. You're going to recover so much better. I mean, I bet some of these guys go to hockey and they're wiped for 2 days, right? Because they didn't like give their body what they needed. They used everything they had to go play in this game. And then the next day they feel like crap. And they're like, oh, I don't get it.
Are there any, and maybe Courtney, you can share one of Laura. Are there any stories from when you were pro athletes, especially as the good fueler of things that kind of led to the birth of feel goods, like a bad moment? And because in a pro race, imagine not only is it then the habits you form and knowing what to eat, but it's still the logistics of eating on a bike, right? You're sitting in the saddle for long periods of time. How do you make that all work? Is there any good stories from back in the day?
I mean, I don't know where to start. There's many with Laura specifically. I think we met as teammates in Boulder, Colorado. So you have that addition of adding some altitude to the training, which makes that bulk extra bad. But yeah, we did a lot of the sort of long 5-hour kind of rides around the mountains there. And I do recall a ride, Esther's Park area from Boulder. And I do believe she pulled out a banana at like hour 2 with her bottle still only 1/8 drunk. And I'm pretty sure it was a rough ride home. I don't know if you remember.
She blacked out.
Yeah, she may have blacked out. Like she's pulling out a banana 2 hours in, and I probably had 2 bars. I'm on my second bottle. Like I'm pretty ready, looking for somewhere to refill, right? And she's and honestly, it wasn't the first time, or like the second or third or fourth, until you kind of were like, huh.
Well, and I mean, we're having fun at your expense, Laura, but there's also, that's another, that adds to the complication of the category too, because it's not just a matter of having the knowledge. What do you do? What's your plan? There's also how you feel, right? I mean, I remember definitely plenty of times doing a longer trail running race and just rolling into the aid station. I'm like, I don't want any of this shit. Like, I do not want anything that's in here right now. And I know I'm supposed to eat something, but I feel like I'm more likely to throw up if I actually eat something. So that's a hard thing to figure out.
Yeah, fueling is tricky. And I think that I'm kind of tasting my own medicine, because it's like I didn't know that part where it was like I just thought I had to fuel for the effort, and if I could survive the ride or the run or whatever, that was enough. And then I started training with Courteney, and and Courtney's well seasoned, right? And this is when I like my first year on a UCI team, and I was like, I could not stack days. Like I could survive that 5-hour ride. I could get back feeling like crap. Meanwhile, Courtney's like doing jumping jacks around the apartment, feels wonderful. And I'm like a sack of crap on the couch. And we got to go back out and do it again tomorrow. And I just couldn't, right? Like I think it's easier when you're training at that level to realize how much you're being depleted. And now I don't do any of that anymore, but I kept up the fueling habits, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, life didn't have to be that hard. But I think it's like, just like anything else, it's almost like you have to go into the depths of the valley in order to like make a change, right? It's got to be so bad that you got to make a change. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is like not let people let it get so bad, especially if people are not like training at that level. It probably won't get that bad and you won't feel it. But then like 10 years down the road, you're like, man, what's wrong with my body? Like it's just, it adds up. So whether it's over a short amount of time or a long amount of time, but yeah, I really made a lot of fueling mistakes at the beginning. And it was like, I will never survive if I don't change something. And it was just like so crazy that fueling was so, it is probably the cheapest, easiest thing to change comparatively to like buying a new $10,000 bike or, something like that. But it made such a humongous difference for me. It was just wild.
I mean, I think the crazy thing too now that work is like, it's crazy. So like it's full time for us now, and riding is something that we get to enjoy. And the research and all the new products that have come out lately with like loaded with carbohydrate, and it's like, okay, what can your body tolerate per hour? And Laura's definitely gotten really big onto the high carb train. And I actually think she might be just as good a cyclist now as she was back in the day, because like it's the first time she's actually given her body like a lot of fuel, and you've been feeling really
great.
Good.
But like before the 5K, I drank high carb.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need high carbs to run a 5K. It's not like I couldn't have done a 5K effort. And that's, that's the difference though. It's like, I felt fine during, I felt fine after. It's just, it's a little thing that is a big thing, I think. So I've climbed up more mountains than I can imagine trying to chase after Courtney. And I'm like, oh my God, if I just would have done this then.
Thank goodness.
So if you go back with the knowledge you had now, but you could only take with you your knowledge of fueling, or you have to ride a like off the shelf, like giant entry level bike, would you take the knowledge or would you take the high end bike? Like what's better with the bike or the knowledge? That's a no
freaking brainer for me, Colin. I'm like, put me on the piece of crap bike any day of the week. I went back this year. So this was this year, wasn't it?
What's that?
2024?
Yeah.
I did 2 women's professional bike races.
Oh yeah.
This year. Kind of off of the same kind of deal as the 5K. Like every now and then I just am like, why don't I just mix it up? I went on my rim brake clunker and
that's amazing.
Into the women's peloton with no fucks given. I was like, it's not about the bike. It's never been about the bike. It's about
the engine.
Pushing the pedals.
Only person without disc brakes in the entire peloton.
And you know what? It was pretty...
As the guy who likes, fully rigid steel mountain bikes, like I love this conversation. This is the best thing ever.
I'm not saying that the bike doesn't matter, but it is, you cannot ride a fast bike. I don't care If
Yeah.
you tried to go do a big tour stage with no fuel on the fastest bike in the world, you'd be limping in and out. You'd be lucky to make time cut.
And then you definitely won't start the next day.
So but there still has to be, and I know nothing happens overnight, right? And we've talked a little bit when Laura and you and I have chatted in the past, but like, how do you make the leap then from the knowledge that Courtney brings to the table, the learnings that Laura is getting from on the fueling side, to creating subscription fuel boxes for other people who want to like have food in their lives delivered to them? Like, what is that? What is the leap? What is the canyon you have to go over to get from point A to point B?
As the user, or how did we get there?
How did you guys get there?
How did we get there? I think, the subscription boxes started as a necessity, right? We were making very little money racing bikes. And we actually, even when we were on some pretty solid teams that were winning a lot of races, and so most of your money is prize money, it's not enough to survive. So the subscription boxes were that was our income, right? Yeah. So that we started that as a way to actually just make some side money.
But who was the first one that said, let's put together a subscription box? It just kind of seems like a pretty random thought, right?
It was actually, so my really good friend at the time, her sister it was when Birchbox came out, and she was like, I think I want to do something like the Runner Box. And I was still working corporately. And then she was like, you know what, actually, I don't actually want to run a business. And I know you kind of are on the fence about quitting your job to race. Would you want to do this? And I was like, yeah, I would. So that's kind of how the Runner Box all started. And then that was in 2014. In 2015, I met Courtney when we were racing. It was just logical to bring on the Rider Box. And just kind of every year we were chipping away at it. And it was getting bigger and bigger. Then it was like getting so big that it was like, we can't keep racing bikes and do this. It was just way too hard. And every year I was like, this is going to be my last season. I never went into racing thinking it was going to be a long-term career for me. I literally left my job thinking I will do this for a year, because I couldn't miss out on the opportunity to travel the world and have the experience. It was never about like a career, quote unquote, in racing. But every year there was better opportunities, and it's so much freaking fun. I always tell everyone, like, when they're like, describe bike racing to me, like being a professional bike racer. And I was like, it's like adult sleepaway camp, like you just like travel with your friends around and you hang. And of course it's not as glamorous as they make it, but it was very fun. And I was like, I'm going to quit. And then it was like, oh, no, there's just this one more thing. But then COVID hit, right? And it was like a very easy, there was no FOMO, there was no racing, so there was no choice. It was just like, we're not racing.
Well, what are we doing? Right.
We put our heads down. We had so much more time to actually work. And with like no one being able to go anywhere, the business exploded that year. And then it was like, okay, we actually are not going back to racing because we couldn't go back to it if we wanted to. But from there, so we like really did that in 2022, we were like, well, what is actually next here, right? Because I think me coming from corporate, and I love business as much as I love like endurance sport. Like, I think it's kind of like a game to me, right? It's like, what do you have to tweak to make it work? And how do you reach the customer? So when we looked at the subscription boxes, there's like a limited cap on where we thought we could take that, and even who you really can help, because there's a certain person that wants a subscription box. They think that discovery is super cool. They get it for a year or two, and then they're like, oh, you showed me all the fun things. Now I'm going to go buy them somewhere else. So we really knew we needed to offer something else to our customer, like a way for them to go back and get more, a way for them to customize their own subscription. And Courtney and I were like, okay, so if we look at what would really be next for this business, it's not like a small pivot. It's like a pretty big leap into something completely different. And we both were like, do you want to do it? And we're like, we're going to do it. I mean, we did a lot of research. There just wasn't anything in the space that kind of was filling the need that we saw. And like I said, we're pretty passionate about people figuring out how to feel good. And it was, I think we're making it easier, but it was pretty freaking complicated to go figure it out yourself.
Sure. I mean, it's like, it's a category, like back to kind of the first thing we said about, it's like an afterthought, but it's also massive, right? I mean, I remember like when I started at Pro Bar and Goo, which was 13, 14 years ago now, it was still kind of like, well, there was like natural foods and grocery, and then there's like, then you go to run, bike, and outdoor stores, and there's stuff there. And it's like, now it's kind of a little bit more all over the place. You can kind of find things in a lot of different places. It's easier to find things than it ever has, but it's still, to your point, the knowledge isn't there. Everyone will always ask, what should I eat when? And I've definitely still had people who I'll get a text like, "Hey, I'm doing a race. Like, should I eat goose or whatever?" It's like, have you been eating goose? Because like that's
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
if
no,
you haven't, then
it's
don't start now. Like so as you guys look at since the launch then of Feel Goods earlier this year, what are you seeing in your customer base? Is it still primarily kind of the spandex crowd that kind of you came up in? Are you starting to see more of the outdoor folks, or even just the everyday folks who are like, actually, yeah, I just want to have some snacks delivered to me? Like, what are you seeing in the customer base?
It's a great question. And you tell me if you're seeing the same thing that I'm about to say. We definitely, I'd say this, not the spandex crowd.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'd say like a lot of, and although we come from cycling, a lot of cyclists are just like very rigid. I'm trying to think of
About
politically
drinking an
correct way
eighth
to
of their
say this.
bottle and eating a banana on a 4-hour ride. Yes, we learned that in this podcast.
Yeah, there you go. And I think they're less open to some of that discovery. But we're seeing where our kind of like really where we shine is with some of that, like the everyday athlete, right? Is someone
Yeah.
that's like, I want to feel good, but like I'd be super open to trying this thing or that thing, or like, what do you think is best? Someone that's not as maybe set in their ways, which a lot of time leans towards a younger customer, perhaps. And if you look at where, like, we have a really strong hold in running, that's probably our biggest hold right now. So many people, younger people, Gen Z, are coming into running. There's like this big revitalization of running, and it's all from a younger group. They
Right.
really love our stuff. I think they're seeing it. We try to make the brand fun, and we really try to take the edge off. Like, a bunch of nutrition has just been like geared right to the elitist, right down from the packaging to the messaging. They're like, if you want to be the next Meb Khaleesi, use product X, right? And these
Right.
Gen Zers are like, we don't care if we win the race. We just want to be out here, right? And I think like just the narrative and the space is changing. I know it's the same in outdoor. We're seeing all the same thing, right? Like you talk about it all the time. Like, who is the new outdoor consumer, right? Like,
Yeah, it's like for a while, outdoor meant something. Like I think outdoor conjured a specific image to people. In our generation, I think now like for the last even 10 years, there's anything that's like outside is outdoor. Right. And
yes,
if you say outdoor, you're not thinking, oh, an ice climber. You're thinking like, oh, the person who's playing spike ball on the beach. That's outdoor, right? It's like, yeah, sure. I guess so. They're burning calories and they're on the beach. So sure, that's outdoor,
yeah, we're gonna have a spike ball box. No,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Uh,
yeah, it's definitely, I think, a younger consumer, or someone who just like, we say like Gen Z moms are a huge category for us. It's like the industries talk to everyone like, if you want to be faster, if you want to win this race, if you want to do that, and we talk to people like, if you're trying to pick the kids up from school and get a workout in at
Yeah.
5 a.m.
Yeah.
and do all the things, like I think we just come at it from a point of like, we get it that you may not trying to be a professional runner, and
Mhm.
you're balancing 4 other different things, and you're just as much of a hero.
Mhm.
And I think, that market just has not been seen or heard in a way. They're like craving it so much because like they're out there doing the thing. They're out there doing a marathon and working a 9 to 5 and raising kids and you can go down the list of everything people are trying to do these days. But the market still speaks. Like, we were just at TRE, and what an awesome event. Like, I think you were there too, right? Like, really
Yeah.
cool event, but you walk through there and there's still this vibe of like science and high end and this, like, it's very much like that. And I don't know when the industry is going to shift to say, hey, most of the people out here, they're not that person, right?
Well, and I think that's where almost fueling and food can lead the way, right? Because I mean, I guess that's maybe you would have more just like the hardcore spandex or runner audience if your product assortment matched that, and it was just like, hey, we have Tailwind and Hammer and or pick your insert your brands here.
Yeah.
But you guys do a really amazing job of having just this huge variety of things to choose from, right? And it's a lot more open and engaging to the consumer who's going to say like, oh, I'm interested in this. Oh, it's not just some super, sciencey drink that maybe kind of tastes okay. It's like, no, there's stuff that just tastes good and you're going to want to eat it or drink it.
Yeah, no, and we appreciate those kind words. That's all
Yeah.
Courtney. She does all the product assortment stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think one important thing to us is it's like, okay, you're training for something and that's great, but usually that takes what, like 1 to 2 hours a day. And so what are you going to do with the rest of the day? Like we need healthy snacks and like some oatmeals and things that kind of get you through, because it's, if you feel right and then you just go off and have whatever you want for the rest of the day, that's maybe not going to help your body be happy, then you're not going to go as well the next day. So it's really important to fuel all day. And I think the difference too is like, okay, maybe some of the people who sign up for Feel Goods are still racing marathons, and maybe they're doing 5 or 6 hour marathons. Like they can still take the same fuel as somebody doing a 2 to 3 hour marathon, but they just need more of it. So it's like, yeah, I think just the understanding, having a big variety, but also not too big to overwhelm them, just having very vetted products on there is really important.
Obviously, everything's about making it more convenient for consumers. But now, so I know, and you officially just launched Feel Goods earlier this year, right? Still relatively,
Yes.
even though the runner and rider box has been around for a while. But what's
Yes.
the growth plan? To your point, like how do you keep them sort of engaged with the products? Is there a ceiling to the subscription box model? Is that something that you need to worry about down the road? I mean, I know that's maybe not where you are today, but is that something you guys are thinking about?
I think it's definitely something that we're thinking about, and it's why we made the pivot. Because I think if we would have just stayed with the runner box, I mean, we had a very healthy subscription base that was growing, and I saw there to be a cap there, because it was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big data nerd, and our retention was pretty good, and there was fall off, and it's a huge gifting product. So people would buy someone a year-long subscription. They would get boxes all year round, and then they'd be gone, right? And it's just like
Right.
what happens there? And we've just been giving them all these awesome ideas of how to fuel, and we don't have anywhere for them to go to get more of it or any of that. So I saw there as being like a big cap on the subscriptions, because you really can only get, so you really could do so many of them, right? And then it's just like this ever going hamster wheel. I was like, we need a place that, like, people love the subscriptions, they still do. And I felt like we could better service them by giving them one place to go get more. And then once they fall
Mm-hmm.
off, they already like the model, right? They very much enjoy that it just comes to their house. They can just customize their own, right? So they can just go pick the things that they want, have them delivered right to them. And I think we've set up, because we come from subscription and we really understand like the surprise and delight and keeping people engaged, we've set
Yeah.
up our auto ship program to kind of still have that. So you could go on there and you could pick like 12, 10, I don't know, 20, however many items you want to come to your house. And then before the next box comes, it's going to be like, hey, do you want to change anything in your box? And you're going to see all the new stuff we've picked for the runner boxes and the rider boxes and added to the platform. And you can be like, oh, I see they've added this. That sounds cool to me. That sounds cool to me. That sounds cool to me. So it's actually like this really beautiful marriage with the current, like still running the subscription boxes, that we're
Yeah.
constantly curating new stuff. And even if you have a custom subscription, you can kind of cherry pick from that. And a lot of people like to do that. So I think by having both of them run parallel, someone can customize and get all of that surprise, but on their own terms, right?
So what is there a wholesale conversation to be had here? Because kind of our point earlier is like there's still a real lack of knowledge, right? And I'm starting to think about, and nothing comes to mind like as an immediate obvious thing, but is this a solution for Feel Goods to kind of say like, hey, we're going to lead folks to how you should, not only your consumers should fuel, but also how you should be presenting fuel in your store? I mean, is this an opportunity for Feel Goods to kind of take a bigger role in the larger sort of, outdoor industry and kind of lead the way when it comes to nutrition?
I think that's a great question. And Courtney and I have gone back and forth on this. I mean, we're still like a small team, and we obviously want to do all the things. And I think it's just like I think you can do everything. You just can't do it all at once. I think wholesale
Right.
would be an unbelievable channel for us. Cause I just imagine, like, I know how many people go into an outdoor specialty store or a specialty run store, and they just look at the wall and they're just like,
Right.
what?
They're either
So
overwhelmed or like, oh, they don't have the one thing I have, or they're just like, oh, I'll take that one, I guess. Right. I mean, it's kind of a weird kind of shopping experience.
it's the way it goes. And I mean, we've circulated this conversation with some run specialty stores, and there definitely is interest in having a runner box at their store, or like, at some of these. I think it works really well in specialty, because the
Yes.
people that
Yeah.
run those stores, they just don't have time to curate something like that, right? Like the nutrition, they make some money on it, but it kind of is the afterthought. That's not where they're making their money on shoes, right? And apparel,
Yeah.
mostly shoes. So the nutrition becomes an afterthought, and that rolls through to the customer. So we see a world in which we can provide them a better customer experience, right? Which they absolutely want to do. They just don't have the bandwidth, right?
Right.
And so we can go in there and we can kind of curate these boxes and have that be as like the very easy in. I think there's always like, we're not trying to take away from run specialty per se or outdoor specialty, because I think they're a really beautiful space. So we're just figuring out like how to toe that line so we can work together and all win, because I personally believe it's totally possible.
I think, yeah, this is an opportunity for creativity, right? I look at it as, if you could almost operate as almost like a distributor in a way. Like most people would
Yeah.
say, like, oh, there were people just kind of shop and order things. Like, no, we would curate who's shopping in your store, who's coming in here, and like we could actually tell you that this is the right assortment to have here. Because to your point, the opportunity is the fact that the buyers don't want to deal with it because it is such a small category for them. I mean, I encountered that when I was a sales manager. I would create sales programs that were specifically designed to take the word no out of the equation because everyone just wanted to say no. No one wanted a new brand. No one wanted to fill out the paperwork. No one wanted to deal with inventory that was going to expire after a year, all of that stuff. And so we just said, look, all right, here's the deal. We're going to give you your first order free. We'll take back whatever you don't want to have. And we actually don't have to send it back to us. We'll just reimburse you for it. All these things. And then if anybody at that point was like, not interested, I'm like, okay, you just can't be bothered, right?
Right.
But there were some who were like, thank you. Yes, we like your products and we would like to give that a try. And so I think that'd be an interesting, like, why not make your life easier by partnering with the experts, Feel Goods, who can say, this is what your customers should be shopping, and we could provide that for you. That could be an interesting, it could be interesting down the road.
I absolutely agree. I think that would be a massive channel for us and a big win for everybody all around. Consumer, specialty,
right?
And us. We all win. And yeah, I can't wait for it to start having some of those creative conversations.
Yeah.
I think it will take someone wanting to be creative, right? Because the industry, as you know, the industry is like kind of old and tired, probably not even kind of, it just is, right? Not everybody, but a lot of it is. And I think they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, when is someone going to make a change to make it better? And I get it. Like, it's just like when we switched to Feel Goods this year, what a freaking lift. Sometimes I'm like, what are we doing? We're out of our minds. It is so hard to change something, even if you know it's going to be better at the end, right? And I think we just need to find those people that are willing to say, hey, we're willing to take the risk and do something hard because we know that the reward for us and when you reward your customers, you win, right? They always show you with your dollars.
Everybody wins.
But it's like we can do something better. We know it's going to be hard and we're still going to do it. And we think we can totally change the game for everybody.
That's awesome. All right. Well, the last thing I think we should talk about, obviously, is the fact that you guys are an Asheville, North Carolina-based company. And, it's been 2 months, so no one's talking about Hurricane Helene anymore, except for I feel like maybe me on this podcast. Because it's like, but I mean, listen, I get it. We're conditioned that way. I think about probably after, Katrina, any of these things that happen, Courteney from New Zealand, there's a big earthquake. It's like, hey, that was in the news. It's over, right? That kind of thing. I'm in Southern California. There's going to be a big earthquake. The same thing will happen. We'll move on. But that being said, you guys had an interesting fall. The most, kind of, where you are located is kind of in the center of where most of the damage occurred, if I'm not mistaken. So how are you guys still being impacted by the storm, more than 2 months later? Are you seeing progression? Is it still tough times in Asheville?
Well, first of all, thank you for all you're doing for Asheville. I mean, it really means a lot to us because news cycles do go that way, right? And we totally recognize that. And it's hard because Asheville is still seeing massive impacts. I mean, for us, we are just now getting some of the orders that we shipped before the hurricane because they've bounced around the country a million times over back and forth. Oh my
God.
Yeah, it's
I didn't even think of stuff like that, like getting deliveries.
Stuff that was during the hurricane, like got lost all over the place. It got sent back here, there, and everywhere, and we're just now receiving some of it, which obviously, like supply chain wise, had big impact on the holidays. And just the warehouse, though our warehouse was I don't want to say completely flooded because our inventory pretty much survived. They had to tear out the floors and walls. Are still figuring it out. I mean, it's like a co-warehouse and there's a really cool nonprofit in there called Babies Need Bottoms. And there's been so many diapers donated. Like the forklift is just going through a diaper maze just to get anywhere. Like there's a lot happening. And I really think for us, a lot of it is just delays in like the product receiving. Things just are taking longer. But we were very, very lucky.
Yeah, I mean the warehouse is just the people who work there have just hustled so hard. Like they were shipping things out about a week after the hurricane, so they're like it was just how hard they worked. But I think for us, like there's definitely it's still clean up in Asheville. They're not like some of it's rebuilding, but most of it is just still cleaning up. And like we're in the depth of it at our office. Like we can walk up our stairs and go to our office that is being dry. Like it got a small amount of flooding, but it was it was fine. Meanwhile, our neighbors, like Rockgeist, they got flooding to the roof, and they've partly moved in next to us. Also, a company called Watershed, and like you still see every day they're out there. They're not starting to rebuild the company. They're cleaning. They're cleaning all of the equipment they've made. They're still cleaning out like just everything, and it's still happening. So it's hard to see it, and that's one thing about like holding two things at once like that. Okay, we got through it, and that's like, can we feel like gratitude for that? And at the same time, so much just sadness because you see so much devastation around you every day that it's just, that can be hard.
Yeah, there's a lot of work left to do. I mean, infrastructure-wise, the roads, I mean, this stuff just doesn't come back overnight. Courteney just got clean water last week. I mean, it was just, it's been a lot, and there's a lot left to do. I mean, this community is so beautiful. I mean, and so many people who have stepped up like yourself and actually like shown some light on it to say, hey guys, this is still a thing. I mean, River Arts, the main section where everyone runs, is still absolutely devastated. And it's kind of crazy because we are 2 months out. And when you drive through it, it looks like someone hasn't even started to do anything in there. Like that's how crazy it was.
You're almost getting used to it. Like it's kind of like, oh, this is just what it looks like.
Yeah, funny. We had like an office birthday, and we drove out of the office, and like at a major intersection, there's like some railing and stuff, and there was like still just total debris in the railing, and I'm like, come on, guys, can we just not even like?
There's still trash cans on the top of trees. Like it's just like you go past and you're like, huh? Like you kind of used to it at this point, but like if you was from out of the town and you came in, you're like, dude, there's a trash can in that tree. That doesn't make sense. It's like wild. But like, I mean, like for me, I've been doing a lot of running, and I run in the same place 6 days a week, and that's River Arts District because it's just amazing trails there, and they've fallen into the water. So it's like. All the running groups and stuff are just like, where do we run? Like that's the only flat place to run in Asheville. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely hitting a lot of people differently, but it's definitely got a long, long way to come.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have been doing this for some time, going back to the writer and runner boxes. But I mean, as the fact that you launched your brand this year, and when this is all going down, I mean, what's going through your minds as this is happening? Like, oh, we just started this company, isn't it great? Oh, by the way, we're about to be washed out of town. Yeah, I mean, there must have been at least a moment of sheer panic here.
Yeah, the first year of a business is always just an uphill battle, as you know. Getting slapped with that, like we were just starting to catch some momentum, and we were like getting traction. You know how like it is like,
and now your shipment moments. Of bars is in Alaska or something. I mean, like what? How do you deal with that?
There literally couldn't have been worse timing for us. Like we had some really big partnerships that were about to kick off, and then just like boom, and we didn't even have cell service. All of a sudden, you're dark, and it's devastating because it did feel a little bit like back to zero on some of that stuff, which sucks. But I think Courtney and I both like firm believers in like the timing's always perfect, and like it will, like I think you just can't rush the process. I think anytime you start something new, or anytime you're so passionate about something, like you just want to be there, right? Like you're like putting in the hard work, and you're like, I'm putting in the hard work, and it's going to be great. And then as like it just always takes longer than you think. You're always going to reach roadblocks along the way, and I think that later on you see, if that would have happened, then it probably wouldn't have worked out anyway, right? Like there could have been, sure. I think it's so easy to look at like the one side of it is like, we were so ready for this thing. The universe will be quick to say like, you weren't, and it's going to be perfect when it happens in January or February or whatever, right? Like I think it was a total punch in the gut, but our first reaction wasn't necessarily even about our business. It was about the other people around us. Like we launched that Together We Rise campaign as soon as we could, because we did keep our inventory for the most part. We will have a business when we come out the other side of this. Whereas some people were like literally didn't have a thing.
Yeah.
So I
Below
think
zero, not even at zero.
yeah, below
Just,
freaking zero. So I think there was so many people, and I think the whole community's been like that. They were so quick to react. It's why I love living in Asheville. I think it's like this just like beautiful little bubble of people that still care about each other. And you really saw that come to life.
Oh yeah, the support for this town has been incredible. It's like within Asheville itself, and everybody helping everybody has been incredible. But even outside of Asheville, like it has been actually overwhelming how like well looked after we have been throughout this whole experience, I guess we could call it.
Yeah, and there's a
That's
big
awesome.
push for everyone to shop Asheville over the holidays, and I hope they like a national push, right? And I mean, I hope it works because I think for a lot of these smaller businesses, these makers, these creators, this December could change the business for them, right? Like it's just, and it doesn't really take much extra for someone to go click the button on their store versus, you know, I know everyone loves Amazon, and I know it will probably get there
Bezos has
faster.
enough, everybody. All right, he's fine.
He's fine. He's
they're
doing
fine.
fine. Yeah. So I think, you know, even if we can get a small percentage of people to actually do that, it will go a long way. And I know we're going to come through the other side of it.
For sure.
And you're still making the Together We Rise t-shirts? Those are still happening?
We're still making them. We're committed to doing it through the end of the year because we really like we've been able to help a lot of people and it's been really, really cool. And I think there's a big piece coming out about it soon. But like I said, I know how many people shop over the holidays. So it's like this is the time that we can make the most impact. So we're just going to carry it through and see how far we can take it.
Well, and the link for that shirt is in the show notes of the podcast. Glad to hear you guys are okay. Glad to hear the business is okay. Glad to hear all your success. This is exciting. Great to learn more about what you're doing. Thank you so much for joining. You can also hear Laura. Laura was on Gear and Beer a few months back if you want to go back and check out that episode. So we got to get Courteney on to a future one, though. So that'll be, we'll bring her in.
Okay, maybe.
Oh, she said okay. That's commitment. No. Thank you both for joining the pod and you know, good luck with everything. Love what you're doing at Feel Goods.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Colin.
All right, that's the show for today. No parting shot on this episode, but what did you think? Do you want to give Feel Goods a try? Would you support something like Feel Goods in your local outdoor retailer? Send your feedback to myrockfight@gmail.com. The Rock Fight is a production of Rock Fight LLC. I'm Colin Shrew. Thanks for listening. And rumor has it that he's all hopped up on Scratch Lab Chews because he's ready to take us out. It's Chris DeMakes, and he's going to sing the Rock Fight fight song right now. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock